Hello, and welcome to the first of two virtual debates hosted by the Richmond News in anticipation of the 2021 federal election to be held September 20th. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome the 5 candidates who are running in the riding of Richmond Centre. When it comes to provincial and federal elections, many voters simply vote along party line or for a particular leader, which is fine. But the strength of every party is made up by the strength of its individual representatives. This debate gives you, as a viewer, the opportunity to assess each of those individuals on their own merit. Moreover, it gives each of the candidates an opportunity to address issues unique to Richmond and explain how their party's platform will play out in our community. As I said, this is the first of our 2 debates. On Monday, September 13th, we will be hosting the candidates from Steveston, Richmond East. Just so you know what's to expected over the next 40 minutes or so, here is our agenda. I will then, we'll be asking the 4 questions. And with that, I will hand the meeting over to Maria Rantanen, our senior reporter, who will be moderating the debate. Maria?
Thank you. So this election, we have 5 candidates running for office in Richmond Centre, all of whom are taking part today. All participating candidates will be given 30 seconds to introduce themselves, after which we'll be going to questions prepared by the Richmond News. So we will start with Laura Galanders, who's running for the Green Party of Canada. Go ahead, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I want to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Musqueam people. I'm a Richmond resident. I am the coordinator and spokesperson for Richmond Farm Watch, which is the group that stopped mega mansions on farmland in Richmond. I'm also a member of the Richmond Rental Housing Advocacy Group. I'm a business owner. I run my husband's construction company, a local company in Richmond. I'm also the chairperson of the Richmond Food Security and Agricultural Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is James Hinton with the People's Party of Canada. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you for having me as well. I'm a BC resident, born and raised. Got involved with the People's Party as a result of being determined to make sure that this is still the country that I was born in. And my involvement in the community is I used to live in Richmond on Granville and Minoru. I've lived throughout the Lower Mainland. The Lower Mainland's my home. I've been involved in a number of industries from capital markets to direct sales, you name it. I've been involved in a number of community efforts like sports programs, business groups, Terminal City Club events, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a politician by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a patriot, and I'm here to do what I can for the community that is voting on my behalf.
Okay, thank you. And next we're going to hear from Liberal candidate Wilson Miao.
Hello everyone, my name is Wilson Miao and I'm the Liberal candidate for Richmond Centre. I came to Canada when I was 10 with my family and have ever since lived in Richmond. Over the time I see Richmond grow and lots of things that I realized that we should be more attentive with and look for better solution and improvement to make our community safer. And I'm here to represent the people, not just myself or my ethnic group, but every Canadian living in this riding, to speak out on their voice and bring their voice to Ottawa so that they can be heard at Parliament. Thank you.
And Sandra Nixon running for the NDP, you're next.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, I'm Sandra. I want to acknowledge that I am coming to you today from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Coast Salish peoples, Musqueam, Kwantlen, and Tsawwassen First Nations. You can read about me in a number of places right now, including in the Richmond News publication. So what I'd like to take the rest of this time to say is that I believe this is a defining election for us as a community and for us as a country. The pandemic has confronted us with several important realities. The climate emergency is upon us. Racism and hate are harming people and the inclusive fabric of our community. Government is putting profit ahead of people. And we see this reflected in our community and in the stories that we're hearing from folks. I believe we now have an opportunity to summon the courage to chart a course for our city, one that acknowledges and acts on the realities that are in front of us right now. Thank you,
Sandra. And lastly, incumbent MP Alice Wong, who's running for the Conservatives. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Maria. And first of all, I'd like to thank the residents and the voters of Richmond Riding for giving me the privilege of serving them for the past 12 years. And before going to politics, I used to work for Kwangnan Polytechnic University as their entrepreneurs who are in structure and also international programs, helping students as well as the women especially to get their business started. And I've been serving before politics, I was serving in different boards, including seniors homes, the Rotary, and then other international communities as well. I'm very proud of my track record because I was the Minister for Seniors for 5 years. And during those times, I was able to strengthen the protection for seniors, especially those who are most vulnerable for various
Thank you,
ways.
Alice. Yep, thank you. And so the Richmond News has prepared several questions for the candidates. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the question, after which everyone will be given the chance for a 1-minute response. So our first question is on the aspect of housing. Richmond, along with much of the Lower Mainland, is facing an affordable housing crisis with home prices well beyond income levels. Traditionally, governments have called for an increase in supply with the expectation that greater supply would provide more housing opportunities for all residents, including middle and lower income families. But that hasn't happened. Over the past few decades, Richmond has seen unprecedented construction of new homes, and yet prices continue to climb with average home prices over $1 million. So what incentives does your party propose via CMHC's National Housing Strategy to create affordable homes for middle and lower income Richmondites? And our first candidate to answer is James Hinton. You have 90 seconds. Go ahead.
Yes, over the past decades, the federal government has spent billions of dollars, created various bureaucratic programs, and even possibly made housing more affordable without any true results. I grew up in the Lower Mainland, and I watched Surrey, Delta, Richmond, North Vancouver, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, all go from students graduating from high school to finding their sweetheart loved one and going into the workforce. And what has happened is everything's been manipulated. The financial criteria for mortgages, insurance, CMHC, which is actually a higher interest rate than the existing interest rate if you do have a big enough qualification. And in the case of the rising prices right now, it's hard to afford even a 10% down payment when before it was something attainable. So being Indigenous partially in my bloodline, my dad's Black and Cherokee. We're a big part of the Black history in Canada. My grandfather's in the Glenbow Museum for Black history. We know what it's like to immigrate, and my parents came here to the province because my dad was an iron worker and he was seeking affordable housing on the coast from the interior of the country. So, there's a mismatch between supply and demand for housing, lumber costs. My brother's in construction supply. I talk to him every day. A lot of our good timber gets sent overseas, but the question is really about the CMHC, and that means, people having to apply for better credit. And if you don't have the down payment, how do you do it? A lot of the empty homes that they talk about, that's something that needs to be addressed. But again, I'm not much of a politician, but when the people of Richmond get me involved, my job is to speak on their behalf, and we'll address those things with the proper professionals when it's time. But most importantly, the revenue from red tape, from bureaucracy, and the private builders, to increase supply, it's got to be a team effort from everybody, and that's really all I got.
Thanks, James.
You bet. Thank you.
And Wilson Meow, it's your turn to answer the question. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you very much. I feel living in Richmond for so long, I see the price hiked up over 30% over the last 10 years. And every Canadian deserves a place they call home, especially in Richmond. And being myself as a young candidate in this election, I know this issue is real and we need to attend it. There's so many investment coming into Lower Mainland, especially in Richmond. There are homes that is left empty, and there are places that are not fully utilized. And how do we address this issue is really by creating a plan that is feasible for the long term. And that is why I believe with a re-elected Liberal government, we have a three-part plan to cover the affordable housing issue. First is to unlock home ownership so that we can provide young audience, young Canadians, to have a rent-to-own program and a new tax-free home saving account. That way to allow them to save up for their down payment to purchase an affordable home. And at the same time is to rebuild and preserve and repair any homes that we have existing and create more homes so that our Canadians can enjoy affordable housing in our city. And this needs all three levels of government to support it, not just the federal level, but also provincial and municipal. And at the same time, last but not least, with all the overbidding and multiple offers that's happening right now, these need to be transparent. And that's why we have the Bill of Rights imposed. If we elect it, I feel our Liberal government cares for all Canadians and look into the real issue of affordable housing.
Thank you, Wilson. And Sandra Nixon, it's your turn to answer the question.
Thank you. Well, what all of us want is not only a good and secure place to live, but to actually believe and see that home ownership possibly isn't out of reach. And I think many people are feeling that way. Some of the what's really required, I believe, is a comprehensive housing strategy. We need to address house prices, supply, and the availability of different types of market rental housing to meet people's different situations and their different needs. Some of the commitments the NDP is making to bring in 30-year mortgage terms, and this is for people who are maybe in a position to think about buying at the moment, 30-year mortgage terms, which will lower payments for folks, monthly mortgage payments, and to double the home buyer's tax credit, and also expand co-ownership models. Obviously, we need to do more to curb speculation, bring in the foreign buyers tax and enhanced capital gains tax to help prevent flipping and speculation, which is also driving costs up. More importantly, I want to focus on the 500,000 affordable homes that the NDP wants to build in the next 10 years. Absolutely doable. And we're talking below market, non-market, co-op, and other types of affordable housing. Very doable. We can repurpose federal land. We can focus on supporting and encouraging community groups for whom profit isn't the bottom line and the first priority. Give them resources, develop a fund to help them build because they're the ones who know their community and what the needs are. And to partner with community organizations such as school districts and churches who might also have land assets to use. We also obviously need to acknowledge that this is working at different levels, and so we need to work and partner with the city to achieve the goals and meet the needs of our community.
Thank you. And Alice Wong, it's your turn to answer the question on housing.
Thank you very much. The Liberal housing strategy is broken and unproductive. Despite the commitment of billions of dollars, we still find ourselves in the housing crisis, especially in our city, Richmond. So as part of our housing strategy plan, we will implement our plan to build 1 million homes in the next 3 years. And also, the largest landowner is the federal government. So we will, once we get into government, we will release at least 15% of our ownership of our land and buildings to build affordable houses. And also we wanted to build our homes near public funded transit. We also wanted to make sure that it's easier to get a mortgage right now, because the stress test is just not workable, because families can't afford to pay the mortgage, and then they won't be able to even get one. So foreign investors, we encourage them to investment, but in affording in affordable purpose-built rental housing for Canadians instead of buying just flipping properties. So also we wanted to increase the number of homes by, addressing some of the unfair and corrupt practices that have driven up prices, such as money laundering. We also wanted to partner with the municipalities and the private sector to bring new rental units to the market so that we can lower the renting costs by our homes, by our young people especially, because before they can own a home.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you. And last but not least, Laura Galander, it's your turn to answer the question on housing.
Thank you. And that is a really great question. It's a huge issue in Richmond. We've been building a ton of supply and it isn't available for local people to buy. The prices are crazy. A 2-bedroom condo is $900,000. So we need to focus less on home ownership and more on the kind of housing that we actually need right now. If we want our children to have anywhere to live, we need rental housing. We need thousands of units of rental housing. I was a member of the Richmond rental housing advocacy group. We know that developers need incentives to build these types of housing. And the Green Party has committed to restoring tax incentives to developers to build purpose-built rental. And we're also going to give a GST break on any empty condo units that developers turn into rental housing. So these are the kind of things that we need. Even if we take measures such as restricting foreign ownership, which the Green Party also advocates for, it's going to take many years before the housing prices are stable. So what we actually need is housing for people now. The whole model of housing, aside from market rental housing, is we also need affordable housing, supportive housing. We need to bring back new co-ops. The Green Party has committed to building 300,000 deeply affordable co-op housing, as well as 50,000 units of supportive housing. And the greatest thing that the Green Party is committed to doing is to giving consistent revenue sharing to the municipalities for housing funding, such as 1% of GST to municipalities to build these. Thank you.
And now we'd like to give our candidates a chance to respond to their opponents. Perhaps something they've heard and would like to comment on, or just respond. And we'll go in the same order. So James, if you'd like to start, you have 60 seconds to give your response.
Thank you for that. I guess the main thing for me is just all the bureaucracy and the red tape that needs to be reduced. I worked specifically with a number of builders in the Richmond. Of course, Steveson's not my riding, but my friend's contracting company built a very large portion of the Steveston area and all the new build that over the last 15 years. And when it comes to affordable housing, obviously you need the income to be able to buy any of that housing. And I just think it'd be great for Canadians to be able to get into the space without having to usurp all the equity that their parents and grandparents have built in their homes, and then basically end up giving everything back to the bank. And the People's Party of Canada just simply needs to have the ability to speak on these subjects in house. And when it comes to supply and demand, how can you have so many empty houses and people still on the streets, or people still trying to graduate from their degree and looking for a home and have nowhere to move into? So if there's a space, there should be someone living in it. There should be heads on pillows, not heads on sidewalks.
Thank you. Wilson, would you like to respond? 60 seconds.
Coming from a real estate background, I know the issue of affordable housing is not just coming from developers, but also the land prices, and also the supply and demand, and also the need that we require housing in our community. At the same time, I know Liberal Party had helped more than 2 million Canadians to find home since 2015 when they got elected. And we're committed to build more homes, another 1.4 million in the years to come. At the same time, living in Richmond, I drive by many developer sites that left unattended, and maybe it won't even build within the time span that they promised. Why is that? Because of the responsibility of the developer as well. If they don't have enough financing to go through this, why are they even starting this such project? Of course, this is from a municipal scale that we need to look into. But from a federal level, we are supportive through first-time homebuyer incentive, helping many Canadians to start their home. Maybe not in Richmond because of the prices being so high. But at the same time, I'm here to listen to professionals in this industry to fix this issue, to actually find an implementation solution so that we can be heard in Ottawa. That way, we can address this issue. And it's not by, coming up with random plans and say this and that.
Thank you, Wilson.
Thank you.
Sandra, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thanks. In the reading I've been doing, the National Housing Strategy under the Liberal government has been described as underwhelming at best and has completely failed, as we've seen, to get home prices under control. The Liberal government seems to have almost as little real interest in putting a lid on home prices and ensuring the supply of truly affordable options as a Conservative government did decades ago when they got the federal government out of funding housing. My Conservative colleague has said that, they will build 1 million homes and near transit. My question would be, what kind? I don't see any specific targets for affordable housing. 1 million of what kind of homes? And if they're near transit, are those going to be expensive and empty condos? How do we ensure that that's not the case? Tax incentives for for-profit developers, we've seen also isn't effective. I've seen many projects, community groups have tried to, are going through regular development that have gone sideways. And so NDP doesn't have a random set of plans. It has a very comprehensive and detailed plan to address many of the causes of this issue. Thanks.
Thank you. And Alice, it's your turn to respond.
Thank you again. And the success of the federal housing strategy cannot be defined by the number of tax dollars spent, but also by the number of Canadians who are able to access the home they need. Here in Richmond, you can tell how the federal government has failed. Under the Trudeau Liberal government, construction of rental homes has been woefully insufficient. It has not kept pace with demand, resulting in higher rent for Canadians. So Canada's Conservatives, again, here, listen, please, will never tax Canadians' capital gains on the sale of their principal residence, something many within the Liberal Party are threatening to do. One of their candidates even mentioned it very clearly that this is exactly what they are going to do. I'm also interested in addressing the homelessness problem in the country and also especially in the Lower Mainland. We want to make sure that the city and the provincial government and together with the federal government, we work out how we can really help these homeless people. My heart breaks when I see them, actually sleeping in banks, within banks during the summer, wintertime, in the cold. So, I mean, when we talk about housing, how about those who are really homeless? So, I mean, and under the Liberal government, prices keep going up and up, and some of them can never afford to have a roof above their head.
Thank you, Alice. And Laura, it's your turn to respond.
Thank you. What I hear from the Conservatives and the Liberals is making it easier for people to buy a home, and these measures that we're proposing are what the other parties are proposing is going to continue to drive prices up. We've been adding and adding density, and the prices keep going up. And I'm not hearing any solutions for the situation we're in today, which is that our children don't have places to go and rent. And whenever we create density in the cities, which is good, it also displaces families who were renting those older homes that get torn down and turned into newer townhouses that most people can't afford. So I bring it back to that we really do need rental housing. We need the construction industry to keep going. It's a huge amount of our GDP, and I think that the political will is actually to keep that money coming in. And it's not about homes for people to live in, it's about the income from the construction. So we need those types of developments to be rental housing. We need large scale rental developments. And Green Party is going to provide the tax incentives for the developers to build those, which is what we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for answering our first question. We'll move on to the second one, which is on the government's response to COVID-19. So we are in the midst of a fourth wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with rising cases and hospitalizations. Health experts tell us that vaccines are our best defense against the virus and the evolution of new variants. However, mandatory vaccines for some professions, such as healthcare workers, and vaccine passports is being challenged by some in the name of personal rights and freedoms. So our question is, do you support mandatory vaccines for certain professions, such as vaccine passports, as well as vaccine passports? And what other initiatives would you support to fight the virus? And for this question, we're going to start with Alice Wong.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the good question. And we are right in the middle of the COVID-19, and then the number is over 800 in Richmond. I mean, in BC, so it is scary. And the fact that the Liberals won an election right, just want to make sure they grab the power, just unacceptable. So again, I think it's important that we must never be caught again as unprepared as we were when COVID hit last year. So I truly believe that vaccine is the way to go, and we wanted to make sure that everybody who needs vaccines will get to it. And even in my campaign, everybody who works as my volunteer has 2 shots, and then they are well past the 14 days. And if they do not have it, then we will test them with our rapid testing kit. And then, going back to the Canada Emergency Preparedness Plan, when COVID-19 hit, the Liberal government wasn't ready. Caught unprepared, they made bad decisions, they cost lives and crippled our economy. And we, the Conservatives, will ensure that Canada is ready to face future pandemics, and then also make sure that we take rapid action so that we can protect the health of Canadians while avoiding long-term impacts on the economy and mental health. And when I'm at the door, I heard stories like some people die of loneliness, or they die in loneliness. So I mean, this is a great impact, and so I definitely respect the jurisdiction of the different provinces for their passes.
Thank you. And Laura Galanders, it's your turn to answer the question next. 90 seconds.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting that question. I support vaccines. I'm vaccinated. Specifically, do I support mandatory vaccines in certain professions? I think that we absolutely have to trust our public health officials, and we have to trust the science. And if the science shows that an unvaccinated person can cause more risk to the people that they work with, and that employment setting requires that kind of safety, then I think it could be mandatory. I also support vaccine passports. I think we could really be doing a better job of outreach and compassion and respect and dignity towards both sides of that issue. I think that we need to listen to people who are afraid of vaccines and who are afraid that their rights are being taken away. These are genuine fears that people are having, and I think we need to be doing a better job of mending those fences and being more unified as a country right now. We really need that kind of leadership. And this election being called in the middle of a pandemic, I believe is a really irresponsible choice, and it's bringing the worst out in people at a time when we really needed to be unified. And COVID shouldn't be a political thing. It's a health issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Wilson Meow, can you answer the question next? Thanks.
Thanks for your question. And being a Liberal candidate, we must be all fully vaccinated in order to run. And knowing the Conservative leader had been stating that he can't give us a number of how many of his candidates are being vaccinated. Over this past 18 months, it's clear what our government has done. Right now, the whole Canada, there's 77.7% of Canadians are fully vaccinated. and we have enough supply for everyone to get vaccinated to get through this pandemic. It's sad to see how we are not united in this, and hearing protesting about freedom of choice, which I completely respect that. But at the same time, the best line of defense, like we all know from science and data, is to take the vaccine. There are kids under 12 are not able to take the vaccine, and why are we as adults putting endangering our next generation in our community to face such a pandemic right now? And as a Liberal government, we make sure that we can resolve this as soon as we can and move forward with a greener and a safer economy recovery so that everyone can continue back on track and there's no more lockdowns or restrictions. And we have to respect our health official announcing all these restrictions, and we should go about it.
Thank you. And Sandra Nixon, your turn to answer the question.
Thanks. Yes, Maria, absolutely. We need to do everything that we can to ensure people are getting vaccinated and get our vaccination rates up. It's absolutely, science has shown us, the best way to keep each other safe. We're not forcing anybody. No one's being forced to get the vaccine. We need to trust our public health officials and their experience and their care for us. Also, the passports, I know I've been hearing that workers feel safer, especially in hospitality industries, working in environments where there's vaccine requirement to attend. And so hopefully that will help with the crisis we've seen in being able to find people to work in those industries. In terms of workers, we absolutely need to be fighting to extend CERB. We're not out of the pandemic. People are still having a very hard time making ends meet. We need to work on paid sick leave, extend EI sickness benefits and the time for that. And we need to really acknowledge that wellness is a huge thing. We're all experiencing in a more direct way impacts to our health and our mental health. And so working on pharmacare, dental care, and mental health and seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And James, your turn to answer the question. You have 90 seconds.
All right. Well, it's devastating and heartbreaking what's occurred since this pandemic started. All across the board. The unprecedented government response to the COVID-19 pandemic has massively negative repercussions on all Canadians. The physical and mental health, economic well-being, all our rights and freedoms, which people seem to dismiss on this. But I think it's heartbreaking because I was in Chiam, which is a Stalo Nation area, and some of the members were dealing with their job loss, the tragedies, and their the outlook was horrible. And the young fellow, a family man, he was so devastated by all this stuff, and he did not suffer from COVID, but he saw it in the community. He stepped in front of a train. The standard approach to pandemic management has always been to protect the vulnerable, to allow the rest of the healthy population to keep going, with their regular lives, building, herd immunity. Lockdowns of entire populations they're never part of the pre-COVID pandemic planning, from what I understood. This experiment's largely ineffective in reducing the spread of the virus. It's caused significant collateral damage. It's not just about you keep talking about the science. The science says that there isn't enough of an effect to lock down the entire world. Both the vaccinated and unvaccinated can get infected. They can spread it. They can transmit it, which negates the rationale for segregation and vaccine passports. I'm an international traveler and businessman, and I've been restricted and just what? Pardon me?
That's 90 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great. Thank you.
Alice Wong, would you like to respond? Everybody's going to get 60 seconds again. So we'll go in the same order. Alice, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I'd like to salute to the frontline people, the frontline workers, the health workers who are risking their own life to protect our own. So kudos to them. And the most important thing is that we wanted to make sure that whoever wants to be vaccinated gets vaccinated, because it this is one reliable way to protect ourselves. There's no guarantee that we won't get it, but at least we keep our other health protections like washing your hands, wearing a mask, those issues, and social distancing, of course. And then we can then protect each other. You know, having vaccines is to protect each other, not just our own self. And as an international traveler, I do believe that we, you know, other countries have already required that we do need a vaccine passport in order to go to those countries. And again, having any vaccine passports internally is the jurisdiction of different provinces, and we accept that and respect their jurisdictions. However,
thanks, Alice. And Laura, your turn to respond.
Sure. I also want to acknowledge the healthcare workers, the people on the front lines, and the friends and family of anybody who's lost their lives to this virus. I personally know 6 people who died from this virus. I have 2 close friends that were in the hospital on oxygen. You know, so science has shown us that vaccines are the way out of this. We locked down for a short period of time, relatively speaking. This was an unprecedented situation. And I actually think that the government did a pretty good job of dealing with it. And we had a minority government where MPs worked together to pass legislation to get the supports out to people that needed it. And we procured vaccines for the entire country. And that just shows what a minority government can do. And now the solution is to be vaccinated so that we can stay open. And that's what science tells us to do. And we need greater outreach for the people who don't want to get vaccinated to understand that.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And Wilson, you can respond. You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. And I do agree with some of the candidates here. We have to thank you for our frontline worker for standing in the front line, protecting every Canadian. And not just that, I have to thank every Canadian for believing in our government that has done its job by procuring enough vaccine to supply all Canadians so that they have a choice of get their vaccine and get through this pandemic. We as Canada are one of the top countries that is in control of this pandemic situation compared to many other countries around the world. And we have the privilege by opening the borders to international foreigners coming in as well, because there are a lot of people that comes here to study and also visiting families. And we're one of the countries that does it. And that is why Liberal government is fully support with the proof of vaccination to all provincial and territorial government. And at the same time, we want a safer indoor space by providing better ventilation for schools to protect our next generation. And we may have to take another vaccine booster coming up at the same time. Does all Canadians want to pay for that? Or our government actually cover all the costs of these vaccines?
Wilson, can you wrap up? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra, 60 seconds, it's your turn.
Thanks. Yes, I think we'd be hard pressed to find anyone who hasn't been affected, either known a friend or a family member or been affected themselves by this virus. And absolutely, it targets the most vulnerable in terms of the impact. Vaccination, as I said, is absolutely the best way for us to protect the most vulnerable among us in our community. I think that we need to make sure, for example, youth, some of our most vulnerable, they don't have access to mental health services often, or the dental prescription benefits in terms of the impact that on their wellness from the pandemic, but also seniors. So we need to acknowledge that the greatest impact was seen and felt in our long-term seniors care homes, and that a lot of the impact that we saw could have been avoided if the Conservative and Liberal governments had addressed issues that came out of a report done when the Conservative candidate was Minister of State for Seniors, which outlined serious issues with the for-profit model and the quality of care our seniors were receiving. So NDP absolutely want to address this and ensure that we don't end up in this position again.
Thank you, Sandra. And James, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you. Yeah, governments don't want to admit that they were wrong in imposing these authoritarian measurements on on the public. This vaccine, the vaccine passports, both the vaccinated and unvaccinated will suffer from this type of constant control and surveillance. It's it's tough to believe that, or even think that this virus is going to be completely eradicated, because it's a form of a pneumonia, and pneumonia has been killing people in Canada for decades. We have to learn to live with it without destroying our way of life in the process. The People's Party government will oppose the vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, and all other authoritarian measures imposed by the provincial governments. Repeal vaccine passport for travelers, support emergency provincial measures, and protect the most vulnerable, and stop bailing out the provinces that impose economically destructive lockdowns. These lockdowns is what's killing people, because they don't have any money to pay their groceries. We have to support medical research and development of therapies to treat COVID and other viral diseases, because that's what it is. It's another form of something that, unfortunately, if you're weak health-wise, it will hurt you. We got to address the public health officer, Teresa Tam, and get some provincial agencies to
Okay,
address this. And
Thank
that's what the People's Party government will do,
All right.
address it.
And we're going to move on to our third question. I see that our time is ticking along here. And focusing on climate change. So science tells us that the planet is heating up at an unprecedented rate, and implications could be devastating for humanity. Richmond, as an island community already at sea level, is under particular threat of rising sea levels, as well as from flooding from the Fraser River as a result of global warming. So while diking and other measures can help mitigate some of the worst impacts of climate change, what legislation would you support that could lower our emissions and transition us away from fossil fuels? And in what time frame would you do that? And we're going to start with Sandra. You have 90 seconds.
Thanks very much. Oh, thanks very much, Maria. Still telling me to unmute myself. There we go. Yes, absolutely. It's great that we are developing mitigation plans for the impacts here in Richmond, but we need to get at the at global warming, and we need to stop the progress of that immediately to curb the effects that it's going to have on our community. We do need to start with targets. We need definite targets. Targets were set by the Liberal government, and they have not been followed through on. The NDP would also not just keep the 2050 target for zero emission, but also set an interim target so that we're not continuing to be putting it off and hoping we'll do it all at the end. 50% of emissions from pre-2005 levels that we be reduced by 2030 in order to keep ourselves on track. And the NDP is open to reconsidering that if the research is going to support a faster approach to that. Also, we absolutely need to end fossil fuel subsidies. This was a G20 commitment that was made that was also not followed through on by the current government, now providing $900 million in subsidies. No more pipeline purchases or expansions. We do not need any more of these, and we need to stop the Trans Mountain pipeline. So much more, but I'll stop there. I see the hand. Thanks.
Thank you. And Laura, your turn to answer the question.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. The Greens have been leading in climate policy for many years, and it's great that the other parties are starting to get this into their platforms, because Canadians can see that it is here and that it's real. I want to acknowledge the 815 people that lost their lives in the unprecedented heat wave that we had this year. So this is getting really real, and we have to meet our climate targets. The scientists have told us that we have to have a 60% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, or at least a 50%, and the Greens have a target for 60%. The Liberals have been increasing their greenhouse gas emissions every year. There's been had 6 years to increase the reduction, and it actually increased emissions. The Liberals have put us in a position where we're 21% higher than we were in 1990. So we're falling behind. A green transition, what we would do is we would end fossil fuel subsidies. We are going to phase out oil and gas production while ensuring that all workers have great new green jobs in the new economy to move into. We're going to be doing this between 2030 and 2035. We have green innovations, fantastic plans in our policy on how we can do this. And we need to be global leaders. We have every ability to do it.
Thank you. And Wilson, it's your turn to answer.
Thank you very much. It speaks itself. We have the forest fire every year in the summer, the heat wave, right? These are things that allow everyone to know that our climate change issue is real. And as a Liberal government, we believe that a strong economy, we need a strong and healthy environment as well. And that is why we have invested over 60 billion towards climate action and clean growth since 2015. And we invest additional 53.6 billion into Canada Green Recovery and over 100 billion since we formed government towards climate action and clean growth and Canada Green Recovery. These have been done. And our target towards 2030s, we have built so many electric charging stations across BC, working with the provincial government. At the same time, moving towards that path on initiating our green recovery. It's sad to see that our pandemic had actually extended this, but at the same time, we need to be attentive to these matters. And that is why we need to also consider our future generation to make sure that they have the same good environment that they can enjoy in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And James, it's your turn to respond to the question.
Thank you. I'm excited, people in Richmond actually addressing the zero emissions thing themselves by using the public transit, and there's the policy debate about global warming isn't grounded on science anymore. It's been hijacked by big government using crude propaganda techniques and the public ridicule and harassment against anybody who expresses any doubt, make exaggerated claims to scare people that the world's going to come to an end, and even manipulated school children. It's a lot, and the undisputed fact that the world's climate has always changed, will continue to change. Until 12,000 years ago, most of Canada was under ice. Thanks to natural climate change, we live here as a result. So the policies from the People's Party will be to withdraw from the Paris Accord and abandon unrealistic government greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, spending billions on dollars developing countries to help them reduce their emissions. That's going to be addressed. We're going to abolish the Liberal government's carbon tax and leave it to the provincial governments to adopt programs to reduce emissions if they want to. Abolish subsidies for green technology and let private players develop profitable and efficient alternatives. But what's really close to my heart is prioritizing and implementing practical solutions that make Canada's air, water, and soil cleaner, bringing clean drinking water to not just people here in Richmond, but the First Nations communities that have been suffering as a result as well.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you, James. And Alice, it's your turn to respond. I think you might have had some small interruption there, but
yes.
Yes. Okay, we're glad you're still there.
As I said, I had a couple of dogs in my office right now. So
okay.
Anyway,
have 90 seconds.
They're being calmed down. So thank you very much. Canada's Conservatives have a very serious plan to combat climate change, which is real, and we have already mentioned in our plan that we will have a good plan to meet our targets and reduce emissions by 2030, all while repealing Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. As I have always mentioned, the effectiveness of a plan does not depend on the amount of money you spend, but what the end result would be. And obviously, despite the fact that Liberals claim that they spend a lot of money on getting the environment protected, or looking at climate change, but we still are facing the same kind of crisis. So what we believe that there should be one way to reduce our emissions is to use pricing mechanisms, but not the one with the government pockets your money, like the carbon tax. And we will create a new account called low carbon savings account, where, when people, who really need to drive and purchase gas, then they say they had some savings, and they go into a greener style, like using that to purchase items like locally grown fruits and vegetables, meats and dairy products, transit passes, bicycles, or home energy efficiency improvement projects. I think a lot of emission, unfortunately, is caused by our lifestyle. And very importantly, trees. We need a lot of more trees. The Liberals promise to build a lot of trees, but they never do.
It's time to wrap up, Alice. Thank you. And we'll go to responses. Everybody still has 60 seconds. So Sandra, we'll start with you. We'll go in the same order. You have 60 seconds.
Thanks. I've been an EV owner for 6 years, an electric vehicle owner, and there were modest incentives. They were very expensive when I purchased, so it was helpful. But we can't keep relying on these small incremental incentives to move our response to climate change forward quickly enough. I would encourage everyone to check out the NDP commitments. We have a robust, focused, and determined plan. And 1 million jobs is the commitment, and majority of those jobs are going to be in a clean energy economy, and will be focused on a just transition for workers into jobs in those industries, such as renewable energy, retrofitting of Crown corporations, for example, transit and electric infrastructure, also housing construction. And we'll have a climate accountability office to oversee and ensure that we are being transparent and being accountable to the targets and goals that we're setting.
Thank you. And Laura, it's your turn to respond.
Thank you. What I'm hearing from the other parties is especially the Conservatives and the Liberals, is that they're going to act on climate change. The Liberals bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline. It cost us billions of dollars that could have been put into the green economy. And this is not a short-term funding for the green future. This is a 60 to 70-year commitment to tripling the production of bitumen with that one pipeline alone. That is a big doubling down on emissions. And the Conservatives, Aaron O'Toole, has said that he will open up more pipelines that were previously canceled on the West Coast, like the Northern Gateway pipeline. So I don't understand how those parties say that they're going to be reducing emissions when they are tripling down on bitumen production. They're in a race to the bottom instead of grabbing the new green future. And we need to elect Greens, because the Greens will be the watchdog. We do not have big party donors. We don't have to cater to the oil and gas industry and our big party donors. We are going to sign off on any legislation that's good policy.
Thank you. And Wilson, it's your turn to respond.
So thank you very much. I have to say, there is a very good endorsement that we actually got from a former leader of Green Party in British Columbia. Endorsing our federal Liberal plan is combating climate change. Andrew Weaver said that Liberal plan is both bold and thoughtful, and it's the only credible plan to put forward by any federal party. Over the pandemic, we have created so many waste with masks, PPE, and such. And many things are being affected with our climate change issue as well, with the supply and demand on grocery that's feeding into our communities. These are the things that will affect and will be needing to spend money to have a recovery for a greener future. And we have to consider our generations after to leave them a very good, clean air that I used to enjoy when I first came to Canada. But no longer is that happening now because of the wildfire that's happening, because of all these pollution that's happening as well.
Thank you, Wilson. We'll wrap it up here. Thanks. And James, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you. Climate change alarmism is based on flawed models. We know that have been all kinds of predictions that are going to occur. since the 70s. Some of them have come true, some haven't. There's no new ice age, no new steady warming in relation to the increase of CO2 levels. There's, yes, the polar caps are getting smaller, but there's been ice ages changing for millennial. No exceptional rise in ocean levels because there's evaporation. We have that system that you learn about in elementary school. The water comes up, and now no abnormal increase in catastrophic weather events, no widespread crop failure or famine. In fact, CO2 is beneficial to the agriculture. Plants feed on carbon and turn it into oxygen. That's what we breathe. And thank goodness that we're in a country where there's so many trees. And despite what global warming propaganda claims, CO2 is not a pollutant. It's an essential ingredient for life on Earth, and it's needed for plant growth, and it's needed for our growth. But Richmond and the People Party of Canada, we're on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And Alice, you have the last word on this. 60 seconds.
A Conservative government will implement a hydrogen energy strategy and rapidly increases the use of hydrogen, especially green hydrogen in Canada, and builds our export capacity. Protecting the environment can go hand in hand with economic growth. There shouldn't be any conflict. And also we will introduce a tax credit to rapidly accelerate the deployment of carbon capture, utilization and storage technology in the energy sector, and important industries that have few alternatives to burning fossil fuels like fertilizer and chemical production. I mean, I do care about the environment, and that is why, during my time in the government, we actually increased our funding in building our, and strengthening our dice, and also in making sure that the children get educated, and we support the community farm as well, because farming, trees, and everything, will also lead us to a healthy life, and also build a very green technology as well as a green environment for all of us.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to our last question. And just because time is ticking along here, we're going to just shorten the answer length to 60 seconds. So we are going to focus on the economy. So while some industries have thrived during the pandemic, others have been devastated. Our question is, what measures would you support that could help local businesses thrive? And we're going to start with Wilson. You have 60 seconds this time to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, our government, Liberal government, has fought for Canadian business and protecting millions of jobs and putting Canada on the fast track to recovery. But while some businesses are ready to open their doors, others are still reeling from the impact of the pandemic. And many businesses are in the hard-hit sectors such as tourism, hospitality, and won't be open as quickly as still require our help. And that is why our government will be extending these programs and plans to support businesses to get through this pandemic. And at the same time, we're going to raise corporate income tax paid by Canada's largest, most profitable bank and insurance company by 3% on all earnings over $1 billion to establish the Canada Recovery Dividend. So these institutions can contribute more over the next 4 years for Canada's recovery. Also, I want to emphasize, our government, Liberal government, is delivering a $10 a day childcare within 5 years. And this will also help support Canada families by reducing their childcare by 50% in next year and get back into business. Thank you.
Yeah, we're doing a little bit shorter right now. Alice Wong, it's your turn to respond again, just 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. Over the course of the pandemic, millions of Canadians lost their jobs, especially women, because they account for more than half of the year-over-year employment losses. Having been serving in the Federal Women's Committee, I definitely did a lot of studies on that. I do support tourism hospitality, because they were hardest hit, but not birth tourism, as Canada reopened its borders. So to get back to the economy, we must support our local businesses, small businesses. So once the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy is gone, then we probably will get to our new initiative called Canada's Job Search Plan. where we also subsidize, we subsidize the hiring of new employees up to 25% of the salary. And for those who have been unemployed for 6 months, we actually cover up to 50%. The economy is important because local businesses are the backbone of our economy. I wanted to make sure that they get funding for job training as well, and also subsidy for grants.
Thank you, Alice. Sandra Nixon, go ahead. It's your turn, 60 seconds.
Thanks. Well, obviously the subsidies that were available for businesses over the past year and a half, the wage subsidy and the emergency rent subsidy were lifelines for small businesses, local businesses, and the industries that were hardest hit. I'm hearing from businesses in our community, and especially in tourism and hospitality industries, that they're going to continue to be affected for quite some time, and their forecasts that the 20% subsidy is not going to be enough. They are asking for targeted wage and subsidy program, and I would commit to listening to more about how we can do that, exploring that. We've shown that we can do it when we want to. It's absolutely doable when we're saving money and shifting priorities from other areas such as subsidies for oil and gas.
Thank you. And Laura, you have 60 seconds to answer the question on the economy.
Thank you. Small local businesses are the backbone of the Richmond economy. Small businesses employ 69% of the workforce in the private sector. So we absolutely have to support small businesses. The Green Party is going to bring in fair taxation. We're going to ensure that the small business tax rate does not go above 9%, and we're going to increase the tax rate on larger corporations. Our large corporate tax rate is much lower than the United States, for example. We are going to review all legislation and ensure that small businesses are not impacted. I think that a lot of business owners are very afraid of the COVID recovery and if they're going to have to pay for it. So we're going to make sure that small businesses have the support that they need. And we also need housing so that people can staff their businesses. That's the biggest thing that I hear, is that we can't retain workers here because they can't afford to live here.
Okay, thank you. And James, you get the last word on this subject, the economy. So what measures would you support to help local businesses? Go ahead.
Yeah, I tried removing can you hear me?
Yep,
something changed on my screen. Yes?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so the number one thing to help the small businesses would be obviously to end the lockdown, to absolutely crush the vaccine passports and eliminate all corporate subsidies and inefficient government interventions. These bailouts for failing companies, regional development grants, conditional loans, and loan guarantees with implicit subsidy tax credits, it's unfairly supporting some companies and even complete business sectors. This will generate savings of $5 billion to $10 billion a year under the People's Party. Gradually reducing over the course of one mandate the corporate income tax rate from 15% down to 10%. When completed, measures like this will make about $9.5 billion available to these businesses that have been suffering for the last 2 years, and allowing them to increase salaries or invest into productivity improvements. People need to get back to work. People need to get their lives back. And over the course of one mandate, we could gradually abolish the personal capital gains tax by decreasing inclusion rates from the current 50% down to 0%. When completed, this measure could put about $7 billion back into the pockets of Canadians, but Richmond people as well. That's who we're rooting for here, is the district of Richmond Centre. So according to the parliamentary budget officers.
We got to wrap up there.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much.
And Wilson, you can start it once again. So you have 30 seconds this time to respond.
So Canada entered this pandemic in a very strong fiscal position, and that is why we can recover so fast right now. And we take a quick and decisive action to support people and businesses to make historic investment in recovery. We have a real plan. The Liberals has a real plan, a real number to move forward with this economic recovery plan. And the greatest danger to our economy would be not doing enough. And I'm sure most of the people here would agree with me on this one. And that is why I truly believe our Liberal government has stand strong and support our local economy.
Okay.
And to get back. Thank you.
30 seconds isn't very long, so Alice, Alice, go ahead. You can respond to your.
Thank you very much. Our track record, the conservative track record during the last recession in 2008 really proves that the conservatives can really lead Canada out from this great pandemic recession because of what's happening. And also we wanted to make sure that we would keep supporting our small business by giving them loans which are sufficient to back them up, and also help those small businesses to change to another stream if their industry is no longer in need. And also talking about seniors, I do care about the carers.
Thank
So
you.
I wanted to make sure that will be done as well.
Thank you, Alice. And Sandra, go ahead. 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. One of the other candidates mentioned childcare as being critical to ensuring that people can be at work and not a barrier to working. The city came out with a report not long ago, saying that we have a lack of spaces, especially before and after care, but all kinds of spaces, especially in areas of city center that are really booming. And this is, of course, directly impacting families and disproportionately women who work. As Richmond Centre MP, I would be speaking to and lifting up the city's strategy and making sure that the NDP commitment to fast tracking universal $10 a day childcare is put forward. And this would be faster than in 5 years, which I think the other party was promising.
Thank you. And Laura, your turn to respond. You have 30 seconds.
Okay. Not a lot to add in 30 seconds, but just to reiterate that the large corporations made billions and billions and billions of dollars in this pandemic, and the small businesses suffered. So we are going to ensure that any new legislation supports small business and that small business doesn't pay for the recovery. We also can't keep, we spent $28 billion in 2021 on fossil fuel subsidies. So we have green initiatives. We want to, with green, new green business startups are going to get more support from the Greens.
Thank you. And James, you have the last word on this. 30 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, what the People's Party is going to do is put an end to the subsidies where these gigantic corporations are flourishing and the small guy is just literally has shuttered his doors. More government intervention in the economy is not the answer to these challenges. Every time the government makes an additional dollar, takes a dollar, borrows it, lends it, it's a dollar that individuals and business people are not going to be able to have or even invest. That's the truth. I'm running because we need people in the House to actually step up and answer these things. Ottawa should stop taking billions of dollars from the private sector, redistributing through these subsidies, and instead they should be lowering taxes for all businesses and encouraging savings and investment in our economy. We need to be productive. We're Canadians. We've been doing this a long time. The only ways to create more wealth and prosperity is to create more work through efficient and increased productivity. That's it from us.
So thank you all for answering the questions. I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to wrap up. You have 30 seconds for your closing remarks. And once again, we will start with Alice Wong, so going in the opposite order. So 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned in my last presentation, caring for the carers is close to my heart. Right now we have people who have to look after their own kids, their parents, and their grandparents. And very often they don't want it to be promoted because they want to take time off to look after them. And employers are losing very good, excellent, productive employees because they are not providing very supportive environment. So we want to make sure that the carers who are working hard will also be taken care, so that they can feel free to look after their older ones and yet get their employment at the same time.
Thank you. And then we have Sandra Nixon. Go ahead, 30 seconds.
So as I mentioned at the outset, we have a decision point in front of us right now with this election. The decision, will we put the parties who serve the interests of wealthy banks and oil companies and corporations and the extremely wealthy, will we put them in a position of charting our future? Will we allow empty and broken promises continuing to downplay the climate crisis, giving lip service to addressing racism and respecting the rights of Indigenous and minority groups, and doing the bare minimum to support those who've been hardest hit in this pandemic. Will we allow this to be our future and guide the future of Richmond?
Thank you. And Wilson, it's your turn to wrap up. 30 seconds. Go ahead.
So this is a moment for us to decide where our country goes from here. And I want to emphasize that the Liberal platform is so comprehensive that I suggest every one of you to read it, including NDPs, Conservative. I read all the platform, and clearly one will stand out, and it speaks on itself. I'm here to speak on behalf of my Richmond Centre's voters and residents, to speak on their behalf and listen to them so that they can voice out their voice and allow me to be that representation to bring this voice to Ottawa.
Thank you.
And I hope I would have the pleasure to get all the support. Thank you.
Thank you. And James, go ahead, 30 seconds.
Thank you. I got involved in this because I wanted to be part of something that stands up for individuals' rights. Just as an example, the public debates coming up, we have 3 out of 338 ridings. There are People's Party representatives in 312. That's more than the NDP and the Greens. But yet we can't be part of the national debate, the international debate, because a lot of people are watching. So, I just want to say on behalf of Richmond Centre and all its businesses and students, moms, pops, kids, I'm here to fight for our rights because we have to defend them right now. And this is the time. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is my first crack at this, and I will be determined, and I'm not going to quit. So thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you down the road.
Thank you. And Laura Galanders, go ahead.
Thank you. I think what really sets the Greens apart, and if you elect me to be the MP for Richmond Centre, is that the Greens will work collaboratively with any party that puts forward good policy. And I think what's really dangerous is a majority government that then has to cater to their party backers. There's so much in the platforms of the Conservatives and the Liberals that all should have been acted on while they were in power, while the Liberals were in power. And so why promise it now? Tell Ottawa that they will not get a majority government until they put the climate first. Do that by voting Green. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank all our candidates for taking part in this all candidates forum for Richmond Centre. I am Maria Rantanen. Eve Edmonds, editor of the Richmond News, has the final word.
Thank you, Maria.
You're muted, Eve.
Unmute myself, right? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Maria, and all the candidates. That was really great. I want to thank the candidates for participating in this debate in particular, but also just for putting themselves out there as a candidate. It's no small job, but it's crucial to keeping our democratic process vibrant. Finally, I want to thank all of you who have tuned in to watch this debate. I hope you found it helpful in not just deciding who to vote for, but also in understanding some of the community's key issues and considering best ways forward. Thank you.